Every day, the atheist shouted and held up his sign that said, "God does not exist," as if he were provoking the Lord himself to respond. Until one morning, a little girl stopped, knelt before him, and said, with a calm you've never seen before, "He does exist, you'll see." What happened next could never be denied. In the busiest square in the city center, amid honking horns, voices, and hurried footsteps, one solitary man stood out. Sitting in a worn wheelchair, hands firmly holding a sign that said in large letters, "God does not exist." The phrase seemed to shout for him. His name was Leopoldo, a convinced atheist, militant and mocking, of the type who not only doubted but insisted on ridiculing others' faith. He had been there for hours, as he often did, just to provoke. It had been 10 years since the accident that took away the movement of his legs. 10 years since he had buried any trace of belief. Every time someone passed by with a disapproving look, he made sure to respond, "Want to pray for me? Pray for a new leg and see if it helps," he shouted at a lady who tried to cross herself. To a group of young people whispering and pointing, he shouted, "Take a picture, maybe God will appear in the reflection and surprise me." His laugh was dry, almost offensive. He was used to the discomfort he caused and liked it. It was his personal revenge against a heaven that, according to him, had denied him everything. But that day something unexpected happened. A girl appeared before him as if she had come from a place completely detached from the world's rush. She had brown skin, expressive and bright eyes, and her hair tied in a messy bun. Wearing a light blouse and a pink skirt, she looked no older than 7. She stopped before the man, looked at him seriously, and said nothing, just stayed there motionless. The gesture drew glances. Leopoldo, impatient, frowned. "What now? A children's play? Are you going to recite the Lord's Prayer?" The girl wasn't intimidated. With hands near her legs, like offering peace, she softly replied, "My name is Angelica. I just came to remind you that God does exist, even if you have forgotten." Leopoldo snorted loudly, rolling his eyes. "Now God has child publicists? Are you handing out miracle flyers or what?" He laughed bitterly. "Sometimes pain makes us close our eyes, but God is still there anyway," she answered without changing her tone. "Oh yeah? And what does he want from me? That I jump around as if nothing happened? Look at me, girl. This here," he struck his motionless knees, "is God's answer for me." The girl leaned in a little closer, her gaze firm and sweet. "That's not an answer, it's a wound. God doesn't abandon. He heals. He heals," she shouted, drawing more looks in the square. "Where was that healing when my life fell apart? Where was he when my legs died?" When her son stopped, she took a deep breath. It was clear something still hurt deeply inside. The girl observed silently. Then softly said, "God was there. You just did not want to see it because seeing requires faith." "Ah, faith," he scoffed, "the favorite excuse of those who have no answer for anything." She smiled serenely. "Having faith is trusting even when you don't see. You don't need to see the sun to know it warms. Girl, you should be playing with dolls. Go live your childhood and leave cynicism to adults." Then Angelica closed her eyes for a moment as if silently praying, and when she opened them, she spoke with firmness that even the square's noise stilled. "All right, I see words won't convince you. I'll give you real proof." Leopoldo remained seated, still stunned by the girl's last phrase. "I'll give you a real proof." He laughed with disdain. But there was something about the way she said it that made him uncomfortable. The little girl did not step back, on the contrary, she stepped a little closer. Her small, firm steps echoed on the stone floor like bells in a silent church. She stopped right in front of him and with a calm that seemed impossible for someone so young, she knelt at his feet as if that were the most sacred place in the world. "Are you going to pray, sing a psalm, or baptize me right here, princess?" he said, preparing another sarcasm. But the phrase died halfway. Something happened. His eyes fixed on the girl's hands, now extended toward his legs. A soft glow began to emanate from them, golden, ethereal, almost imperceptible in the daylight, but real, very real. It was like seeing the sun rise in the palms of a child. Leopoldo felt his heart stumble. The sarcasm that had always served as his shield slipped weakly from his mouth. He tried to say something, anything, but was left mute. The air around him became denser, as if time had stopped for a moment. And then he felt it, a faint tickling from deep inside something he believed dead. First, a warm current rising from the heels. Then a subtle tremor spreading through his legs. What? What is this? He murmured hoarsely. Instinctively, he looked at his own feet, and saw it. A small but unmistakable movement. The big toe of his left foot moved by itself, as if saying, "I'm still here." A chill ran down his spine. 10 years. 10 years without feeling anything, not even dreaming about something like this. And now, in front of a little girl who barely knew how to write her own name, something had ignited inside him. "This is not happening," he whispered to himself, hands trembling, gripping the armrests of the chair. Angelica, still kneeling, looked at him tenderly, but without arrogance. Her eyes did not say, "I told you so," they said, "It's okay." She got up as lightly as before. "Tomorrow you will understand." And then, without more words, she turned and began to walk calmly, disappearing among the indifferent faces of the crowd. No one looked back at her. No one stopped to see the miracle that had just happened. But Leopoldo knew it. He felt it. Something had been taken out from inside him, not his legs but his soul. Later, at home, the silence felt deeper than usual. The wheelchair creaked slightly every time he moved. He spent hours in the same position, staring at the floor. He tried to forget. He tried to convince himself it was psychological, maybe something he felt because of his nerves, or a spontaneous muscle spasm. It must have been a nervous reaction, a trick of the brain. It happens. Of course, it happens, he said aloud as if he needed to hear it to believe it. But the truth was none of the explanations made sense. He spent the whole night searching the internet for scientific answers, neurological phenomena, sensory illusions. Nothing fit. And no matter how much he repeated to himself that he didn't believe in God, something inside him was now restless, as if logic was being challenged by a force he had always refused to acknowledge. And even trying to run away from that thought, the soft glow in the girl's hands didn't leave his memory. Leopoldo barely slept that night. After hours staring at his ceiling, repeating logical attempts to explain what he'd felt the day before, no theory calmed him. The tickling that invaded him was not psychological. He knew it. It was different from anything. It was real and impossible, but even more impossible was pretending nothing had happened. That is why, at dawn the next day, with red eyes and tense shoulders, he headed for the square like someone returning to the site of an earthquake, seeking to understand why he had not died. The city was just waking up, vendors were opening their stalls, sweepers collected dry leaves indifferently, and the sun began casting long shadows on the ground. When he arrived, he saw her sitting in the same corner with the same serene expression, as if the world around her was at peace and only she knew it. Leopoldo's heart raced. His hands sweated. He felt small in front of the girl. He felt shame, confusion, but above all, an impulse pulling him toward her. He approached slowly. Angelica looked at him as if she had been waiting. "Did you sleep well?" she asked softly. He swallowed hard. "I didn't sleep." "Why?" "Because what happened yesterday moved me in a way I can't explain." He tried to laugh but failed. "What if I didn't imagine it? What if it was real?" The girl stood up, said nothing, only looked at him for a moment with a deep gaze that seemed to see more than ordinary eyes can. Then she approached the wheelchair and with slow, respectful gestures put her hands again on his knees. This time Leopoldo didn't hesitate. He was ready, or at least he thought he was. A wave of heat ran through his body, but it was not physical heat, it was something more intimate, almost spiritual. First came the tickling, then the pulse, and finally an urge, a call to stand. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and when he opened them he was standing. His legs trembling, arms instinctively out to maintain balance, but standing. For the first time in 10 years, the world stopped. His eyes opened wide. His knees wobbled for a second, and he had to step forward to not fall. And then he cried. Not a held-in cry but a release. His whole body trembled. His hands covered his face as if hiding emotion was possible. Laughter and sobbing mixed in a strange, almost primal sound. "I'm back. I'm walking," he said softly, as if confessing a sin. "I'm walking." Then he looked at Angelica, who watched with the same calm expression as always, as if nothing had changed. "Angelica, how did you do this? How did you heal me?" he asked, completely incredulous. "That's not important now," she said. "Now you believe in God." People started noticing around them. A woman dropped her bags. A child called his mom. A young man took out his phone to record. But Leopoldo saw no one. His world was just him, that girl, and the sky above. He fell to his knees, this time by his own will, touching the ground as if to make sure it was real. Tears flowed in rivers, and then, between sobs, he spoke, "Yes, I believe. Of course, I believe. Forgive me, God. Forgive me for everything, Lord." He paused, breathing with difficulty. "I denied you for so long. I defied you. I insulted you. Because I no longer knew how to believe, because believing hurt." Because he raised his tear-filled eyes to Angelica. "Because it was the day my son was between life and death when I stopped believing the Lord existed." The square was silent, as if even the wind had stopped to listen. It was an accident. We were in the car, it rained heavily, and he choked. I lost control. The car spun. It fell down a ravine. I woke up unable to feel my legs. They said I was paraplegic. But my son Pedro, he survived. They took him to intensive care. His condition was critical, and his voice failed again. Spent that whole month praying, day and night. I breathed with difficulty. I begged, I begged God every day to save him, to take me instead, to do whatever, any miracle, but not to take Pedro away from me. And the more I prayed, the worse it got. I watched him fade on that hospital bed. I watched him leave, tubes all over his body, without a last look. And there I died alongside him. The truth is, it was my fault. I was responsible for my son's death. Tears could no longer be contained. The crowd listened in absolute silence. And it was then I decided God did not exist. Because I prayed with all my heart. I promised everything, humbled myself, but nothing worked. And if he didn't save my son when he was most needed, how could I keep believing? He hit his chest hard. I transformed that pain into hatred, denial, mockery. And I lived like that for 10 years, or rather rolled, trying to make others stop believing too, because I didn't want anyone else to expect from God what I did not receive. Angelica did not move, but her eyes shone, a glow that did not judge, only embraced. She touched his hand, and in that gesture Leopoldo felt something break inside, like a chain snapping, an invisible prison finally opening. The days after the miracle were like a second birth for Leopoldo, but not an easy one. Walking was now possible, but living still hurt. Every morning he dressed his new body and headed for the square as if going to meet something bigger than he could understand. Angelica was always there. She didn't ask or demand, she just waited with a serene look and a presence that said more than 1,000 words. And that was what he needed most, someone who would be there without demanding anything, just listening to him exist. On the third meeting, downcast with sunken eyes, he sat beside her on a wooden bench under a tree, and before she said anything he vented, "Walking again is useless. Inside, I still carry the guilt of having killed my son." Angelica didn't react with surprise, just looked at him with moist eyes and waited. "It was me who insisted on taking the road that night. I did not listen to the storm forecast. I was the one distracted at the wheel. I was there beside him and didn't protect him." He wiped his face as if trying to erase an image. "That doesn't leave me, do you understand? No matter how much I walk, how much I breathe, I still feel I failed as a father." The girl was silent for a moment, as if speaking with the sky before replying, "Did you know love also bleeds?" Leopoldo frowned. "Sometimes love bleeds so much one confuses it with guilt, but they are different things." He took a deep breath but did not answer. "Caring isn't having control over everything. Loving isn't avoiding pain," she said softly but firmly. "You did what you could, and when you couldn't do more, you prayed all the time. That is also love. That is also caring." The next day, while watching leaves fall to the ground, she said another phrase that stuck with him. "Your son was loved until the last second, and that's more than many have." Leopoldo bit his lips to hold back tears. He wasn't used to hearing that. People always tried to console him by saying it was God's will or that he was in a better place. But Angelica didn't say clichés, she spoke truths. She set the pace of healing with delicate words sharp like scalpels. She began to talk about Pedro, how curious he was, how he asked questions, especially how he loved to draw, laugh loudly, and run through the house hallways. With each memory came a tear but also a smile. Then he realized he was talking about his son without sinking. For the first time in years, he evoked Pedro's memory not as a curse but as a living longing. "I feel that for years I forbade myself to remember him properly," he said, "because if I remembered him with love, I felt I was accepting that he was gone." "And now?" she asked. "Now I want to remember everything, even the last night. I need to." She held his hand. "Only those who love deeply feel such guilt, but love can also free you if you allow it." Leopoldo lowered his head, resting his forehead in his hands. Tears fell silently. Not of despair but of release. "I'm trying, Angelica. I know. And you've already started." The healing she performed was not visible like the day he got up from the chair. It was slower, quieter, more intimate, but deep. She didn't touch his body. She now touched his memory, his soul. And with every conversation, every shared silence, space opened inside him for pain to exit and grace to enter. And deep down, without knowing how, Leopoldo felt Angelica knew more about Pedro than anyone else in the world. That week was the quietest of all, not for absence but for depth. The meetings with Angelica remained daily but had fewer words and more looks. It was as if, in the space between one phrase and another, she heard what he still did not know how to name. Leopoldo already walked with more steadiness. His breathing was lighter. Laughter returned little by little. And for the first time in years, he spoke of his son without being consumed by pain. He spoke of Pedro with nostalgia, affection, living memories, no longer as a badly healed scar. He still cried, yes, but now he also cried for love. That morning, however, Angelica was different, sitting in her usual corner, eyes fixed on a point on the ground, fingers intertwined on her lap. When Leopoldo arrived with slow and calm steps, she raised her gaze and said directly, "You've walked a lot. You're starting to breathe again, but there is a weight inside you that you haven't dropped yet." He frowned, sitting beside her. "What weight?" he asked, though inside he already knew the answer. She didn't look away. "The guilt the one of believing you killed your son. The phrase fell like thunder in a clear sky. Leopoldo stayed silent for a long time. His face hardened, but not with anger, like someone hearing a truth he already knew but avoided facing. He breathed deeply, ran his hands over his face, and then with a broken voice said, "I'm better, Angelica. I swear I am. I can remember Pedro and smile. Just yesterday I was surprised remembering when he stuck stickers on the car ceiling and said it was his particular heaven." A timid laugh escaped him. "That never happened before. Never. Whenever I thought of him, it was only pain, despair. Not now. Now there's also room for light." He paused, then lowered his gaze. "But this guilt still lives here." He touched his chest with his fingers. "I still feel responsible. I still think I was the one who made the mistake. And I don't know how to live without that weight." Angelica listened silently as she always did. "I understand, but carrying guilt out of love is like drinking poison thinking it's medicine." "I know," he answered almost in a whisper. "But if I let go of this guilt, I feel like I'm saying everything is fine and it's not. My son died, and I was the one driving. I was the one who decided to take the road. I was the one who prayed for him and couldn't save him." He stood up, walked a few steps, and turned his back to her. "I'm walking again, Angelica. I'm talking to God." Laughing, remembering Pedro without breaking inside. "But this," he struck his chest hard, "this still weighs. And maybe I need more time." She approached slowly, stood next to him. "I'm not asking you to forget or pretend it didn't hurt. I'm just telling you that you can stop bleeding." Leopoldo wiped his eyes but could not respond. Not with words. His gaze said it all. He wanted to but still could not. Not out of resistance but because he still did not feel worthy to release that chain. Then Angelica spoke in a low but firm voice, "Come with me. I want to show you something." "Show what?" "A place. Maybe there you can see with your own eyes what your heart still can't accept." Leopoldo hesitated. For a moment he was again the man in the wheelchair, not in body but soul. Fear, doubt, old pain returned like shadows. But Angelica extended her hand. He looked at her, then at himself, and finally took it. And together, with slow and silent steps, they departed. Not yet knowing, he was walking toward the only place where his guilt could finally be confronted without armor. They walked in silence. Leopoldo held Angelica's hand firmly but felt her fingers cold, sweat running down his neck. He made no more questions. Part of him already sensed where they were headed. His heart beat louder than his steps. The street seemed longer, emptier, as if time slowed down its pace just to prolong the tension growing inside him. When they turned the last corner and the iron gates appeared in the distance, he stopped. Tears filled his eyes. His hand trembled. It was the cemetery. "Are you sure I need to see this?" he murmured. Angelica, with her usual calm, answered only with a look, and that was enough. He passed through the gate with hesitant steps. Each step took him back to that cloudy afternoon, the day of the funeral, the feeling of being buried along with his son. He smelled the wet earth as if it were yesterday, the muffled murmur of prayers, his ex-wife's red eyes, the silence of the small coffin lowering into the grave, walking among tombstones. It was like going through pages of a book he had tried to close by force, but there were the memories engraved in marble and moss. Angelica stopped, and he knew before looking that they were in front of the name he most feared to see. Slowly he lowered his gaze. Pedro Martinez, 12 years old. The tombstone was simple, without decorations, with some dry daisies on the side. But that was not just a stone, it was a mirror. And in that mirror, Leopoldo saw his mistake, his loss, his grief, his guilt. He fell to his knees. His legs gave way, not physically but in his soul. "I can't," he whispered. I can't look at this without feeling that I was the one who killed him. Tears came with force. His right hand closed trembling on the damp grass. Angelica knelt next to him but said nothing. It was his moment. He should have said no. He should have postponed that trip. His voice grew among sobs. I should have paid more attention, prayed with more faith, prayed better. I begged God so much to take me in his place, and it was all for nothing. And after that, how could I keep believing? How? His chest rose and fell with difficulty. It was as if each word tore out a buried part. My son died waiting for a miracle, and I died with him, believing I should have been there. Do you still believe it was your fault? Angelica asked with a sweet but firm voice. I don't believe it, Angelica. I'm sorry. Every day, even in my dreams, this guilt doesn't let go. And then the unexpected happened. A soft breeze crossed the cemetery. The leaves on the trees trembled. The air changed, lighter, warmer. And in front of the tombstone, a light began to form. First, a golden mist, almost imperceptible. Then little by little, the silhouette of a small body. The features defined slowly, like a drawing sculpted by time. And then there he was. Pedro. The round face, messy brown hair, the striped shirt Leopoldo still kept in a box in the closet. Time stopped. Leopoldo opened his eyes, unable to believe it. His heart beat as if about to burst out of his chest. Pedro whispered with a broken voice. The child smiled. A smile that dissolved all fear, guilt, years of darkness. Leopoldo brought his hand to his mouth, then to his chest. Oh God, is it really you? Pedro nodded slightly and then walked toward his father. Leopoldo completely collapsed, crying like never before. Forgive me, son, for everything. For not protecting you, for not praying enough, for not being strong. Pedro knelt before him and hugged him. And Leopoldo felt it. He really felt it. The warmth, the skin, the soft scent from when his son came home sweaty and happy from school. Dad, you never abandoned me. I never blamed you. The boy's voice was like music. I saw you every night in intensive care. I saw you hold my hand while you slept in the armchair. I heard you when you asked God to let me go and take you instead. I felt your love, all of it till the end. And still, Leopoldo dreamed, squeezing his son's shoulder as if afraid he would disappear. But I failed. No, Dad, it was only God's time. My mission was short but full of love, and you were part of every second of it. Pedro rested his forehead against his father's. I waited for this day to tell you everything is all right, that you can live, that you can smile again, that you can be at peace. Leopoldo breathed deeply. For the first time in many years, the air entered clean, light, without pain. The hug lasted a few seconds more. Then Pedro began to fade slowly into golden particles dancing with the wind. Leopoldo tried to hold him, but couldn't. I love you, he whispered. I love you, my son. I love you too, Dad. I always loved you. When everything disappeared, Leopoldo sat on the grass, eyes closed, crying but with a serene expression. Like someone who has crossed to the other side of the storm, Angelica approached. He never stopped loving you, and he never blamed you. Leopoldo looked at her, eyes red but alive. And now I can breathe. Leopoldo remained sitting on the ground, covered with leaves and damp grass, unhurried. The sun now broke through the clouds more intensely, as if even the sky wanted to witness that moment of relief, redemption, peace. He breathed deeply, eyes still full of tears, but this time they were different. They were clean tears, almost soft, as if his body was purifying itself inside. He didn't know how long had passed since the last embrace. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. time no longer mattered. He was at peace. For the first time since the accident, he was whole. Angelica kept a few steps away in silence, as if she knew this was a moment just for him. But Leopoldo gradually turned his face toward her, and when their eyes met, something burned inside, a strange feeling of love mixed with distrust, admiration, and mystery. He stood up slowly, still trembling. Walked to her and stopped in front of her small figure. His voice came out hoarse but filled with sincerity. "How did you know he would come? How did you know what I needed? How did you heal me?" Angelica did not answer immediately, just looked at him with tenderness, as a mother looks at a son who finally understood something too deep to express in words. After a few seconds of silence, she whispered, deep down, "You already know." "No, I don't know," he replied, eyes once again full of tears. "I don't understand. None of this makes sense. You appeared out of nowhere, made the impossible happen. You touched my legs and I walked again. You brought me my son. Who are you?" The breeze between the trees seemed to stop. The air around grew denser. The birds held their silence. Then, before Leopoldo's incredulous eyes, the girl's body began to change. First subtly, a soft glow covered her skin. Then a slight transparency, as if the light coming from within her pierced physical limits. Her hair moved as if touched by an invisible wind. And her eyes, those intense eyes, seemed to hold stars. Leopoldo stepped back, heart racing. "No, this can't be. You are not alive." Angelica smiled sweetly. Her voice now seemed to resonate not only in the air but inside him. "I was sent by God. An angel to heal you physically, emotionally, and spiritually." Leopoldo collapsed again with trembling knees, falling to the ground as if his soul needed to bow before that revelation. He covered his face with his hands, completely overwhelmed by emotion. "Oh God, I am not worthy of this. I denied you, blasphemed, mocked the faith of many, and still you sent me her." Angelica approached. Her form still oscillated between the physical and the celestial. She extended a hand and gently touched his shoulder. "Precisely because you were wounded. And the wounded don't need judgment, they need healing." He raised his face. Tears silently streamed down. "I don't know how to live after this. Now it depends on you," she said firmly. "The decision is yours, and so is life." Leopoldo stood up, still dizzy from all that. He looked around as if searching for the floor, but all he found was the faith that beat again in his chest. "I will honor this," he promised. "Every day of my life I will share it with the world, serve, help, bring hope to those who, like me, are lost." Angelica nodded with a calm smile, but now there was something different in her expression, a kind of farewell in her eyes. "Then, my mission is over." Her body began to dissolve into light. First the skin, then the contours, until only golden particles remained like Pedro's. They danced in the air, swirling around Leopoldo, touching his face, his chest, his arms. And when he closed his eyes, he felt something indescribable. An embrace from God, a breath of eternity, the certainty that although invisible, she would never stop being near. And then silence returned, but now it was full silence. The wind blew and carried away the last sparks of light. Leopoldo stood there, feeling the world had changed, or maybe that he had finally been restored. Leopoldo stayed there for long minutes, still, eyes closed, chest open to the wind. There was something new in his body, but it was inside where the change screamed loudest. He no longer felt the weight of guilt, nor the pain in his knees, nor the knot in his throat that had accompanied him for a decade. He only felt a luminous silence, a clean emptiness, a space that was once inhabited by darkness now filled with light. He breathed deeply, lifted his face towards the clear blue sky, and whispered firmly and softly, "Thank you. That day marked the end of a cycle and the beginning of a mission. In the following days, he no longer returned home as before. He returned to the world. A healed man cannot remain silent, he told himself. And so he began to walk along sidewalks, school halls, hospital waiting rooms, churches, community centers, shelters, and squares. In every place where there was pain, he appeared, not as a preacher but as a living witness. He always carried 2 photos, one of Pedro smiling with vibrant eyes, and another of Angelica, taken without her knowing on the bench in the square the second day they met. It was the only visible proof left. But it was not the image that touched people most. It was the story, the way he spoke, the truth vibrating in his voice. He didn't use fancy words. He used the pain he had known and the faith born from that pain. God exists. I walked with an angel, I saw my son, and I came back to life. He said this with tear-filled eyes before nearly breathless audiences. It wasn't long before others began to seek him out. Lost people, wounded people, silent people for years. And he listened to everyone. Like Angelica listened to him, he touched their shoulders, cried with them, and said what few dared to say. What you feel is not weakness, it's just what remains after love was suddenly taken away. But love does not die, it just changes form and sometimes returns in ways we don't understand. One morning, while visiting a school to tell his story, a little girl approached him at the end of the talk. She was about 7, brown-skinned, expressive-eyed, hair tied in a bun. For a moment, Leopoldo's heart stopped. The girl gave him a drawing. It was him, Pedro, and a luminous figure with outstretched hands. "Were you the one who saw the angel?" she asked. Leopoldo swallowed, kneeled, looked deep into her eyes, and answered, "I didn't just see her. She saved me." Leopoldo's name began spreading, but he never cared about the recognition. What moved him was not fame but gratitude. It was the feeling that every day now had meaning. And that even if the world never believed in miracles, he didn't need to prove anything because he had lived one. He was one, and that was enough. At night, before going to sleep, he had a little ritual. He lit a candle, placed the 2 photos in front of it, gently touched the bonsai on his desk, the same he had shown Angelica, and softly said, "Today I watered my faith." And when he turned off the light, he murmured with a smile, "Pedro, I am your dad." And now, he was also the father of many other pains, but he would care for them all because now he was healed to heal. He never saw Angelica again. But the truth was, she never left. She was in every act of compassion, every offered hug, every child who crossed his path with hopeful eyes, and in every whisper of faith. There was always a breath of that girl who reminded him that God never stopped existing. Sparkles, if this story has touched your heart, don't forget to like, share to spread hope and faith, and subscribe so you never miss the next inspiring story. Speech Balloon, leave a comment below to share your thoughts or personal experiences about faith and miracles in your life. Let's build a community full of love and warmth together. Folded hands, red heart.